price is on the defensive, this year, play offense and get back to the fundamentals. For over 40 years, Advanced Trading's non-predictive approach has helped farmers secure and extend profits, regardless of market trends. Let Advanced Trading help you take control of your balance sheet by creating a marketing strategy to protect your operation and reduce market risk. Our team is positioned to help you make the most of 2024. You never stop working, and neither do we.
Good afternoon. My name is Drew Moore. I've got Brian Basting and Jeremy Struber in the green screen room with us here today, and we're going to hash out the May USDA report. Green on the screen, kind of across the board in our markets today. July corn up 12 cents, D's corn up 10.5 cents as of the settlement. In terms of soybeans, July beans up 10.5. November new crop beans up 4 3/4. And then the big story of the day was in wheat, with July Chicago wheat up 24 1/4. So pretty exciting day that we've had, but it kind of stems from an exciting start to the month, actually. So first question for you, Brian. What did the USDA have to tell us on the grain side of the aisle with corn and wheat today?
On the corn side, Drew, very much in line with expectations on the crop size. USDA just took the prospective plantings report, penciled in their trend yield that they used in their Ag Outlook Forum back in February, and came up with a crop size just under 14.9 billion bushel. No surprises there. On the demand side, we did see a bit of an improvement, however. We saw exports increase by 50 million bushel compared to last month, and we saw an increase in ethanol consumption compared to last month. So we narrowed the old crop carryout to just over 2 billion bushel. That was well below what the trade was looking for. So bring those numbers forward now into 24-25 with some optimistic, hopefully, usage numbers for 24-25, Drew. The carryout is much smaller than we thought of earlier this year. It's down to 2.1 billion bushel, and there are some much higher numbers being talked about earlier in calendar year 24.
Right.
And so that number is constructive. So going forward, we'll be watching two other places now, Drew. The harvest is taking place in Argentina. They've had this corn stunt disease. USDA took 2 million tons off the Argentina crop. It's down from 55 to 53. Here's the fly in the ointment on that, Drew. Some private estimates are as low as 46 to 47. So we're just going to have to see how the combines tell the story the next 45 days.
Right.
And that will be very important to watch that. The other variable is Brazil. Brazil's crop is pollinated, the safrinha crop. However, the rough estimate is here in mid-May is about mid-August for the Midwest. By that I mean we'd like to get some good rainfall during August and good cool temperatures to get us some kernel depth, get us some test weight that we had in August. It's hot and dry, Drew, in Brazil. So both those crops are being watched closely now. So those are the things we're watching on corn. Wheat was a surprise, as you said a moment ago, Drew. The soft red crop was much smaller than the trade was expecting. It seemed to me the trade was pretty aggressive with their soft red winter crop over 400 million bushel. The trade estimate, the USDA came at 344. So that's a much smaller crop. Now the yields are still high, Drew. Maybe not quite as high as last year, but recall that we planted less soft red winter last fall for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is the crop insurance price was much lower. But bottom line, the wheat market took off. We probably had some funds short covering in there. Funds are still short wheat as well as corn. But the other things on wheat I'd add, Drew, is that looking at the 24 crop, the crop that's in the ground now, not only here in the U.S., but also in Russia and Ukraine, there's some issues over in Russia now, Drew. We don't want to kill the crop here on May 10th, but it's been quite dry in Russia. Now they've had a freeze, 2 freezes over the last week to 10 days here. And so USDA came out 88 million tons for Russia, 91.5 last year. They're not calling for a catastrophic situation, but that's something we want to really watch going forward. For the time being, I'd emphasize that the U.S. continues to be the residual supplier of wheat exports to the world. Whether that changes or not, we'll have to follow going forward. But I'd say the foundation for the wheat market was changed a bit, particularly for Chicago wheat today, and it carried over into Kansas City and Minneapolis by that smaller than expected soft crop.
Sure. One could probably make the argument that corn and soybean, from a supplier standpoint, we're also the residual supplier there. But Yeah. With that being said, Jeremy, talk to us about the domestic soy complex and what changes the USDA did or did not make today.
The soybean market or report was fairly quiet. The crush number was a bit higher than perhaps estimated at 2.425 billion bushel compared to 2.3 last year. But all in all, not a lot of changes. The yield was kept unchanged at 52 acres, or the same as prospective plantings. And you funnel that all down, we have a carryout projection of around 450 million bushel. Probably the biggest shock to me in this report was the Brazilian soybeans for 24-25 coming in at 169 million metric tons.
It's a big number.
Compared to an estimate this year of 154. That's almost 500 million more bushel, which is equal to our carryout that we're projecting for our crop here. So keep a close eye on South America and what they plant, and that could be a big market mover as we get into their spring, which is our fall.
Sure. Very good stuff. So we've seen certainly an uptick in volatility as as prices have been a little bit more volatile over the last 15 days per se. And if you look at implied volatility versus the July or versus the D's in corn, we've seen that uptick. What any thoughts from like a marketing perspective or cash markets you kind of want to talk about here with old and new crop corn?
Well, as we look in the carryout projections for 24-25, especially on corn, when we first had a stab in the balance sheet, we were coming in closer to 3 billion bushels.
Right.
And now in the estimate with the reduced acreage, it's coming in closer to 2.1 billion. If you were to drop our yield projections from the current 181 down to last year's 177, that would knock our carryout down to around 1.75, maybe 1.8 billion bushel, which is considerably tighter than what we thought we were going to have just a couple months ago. And if you take some exports away from South America and move them up here, there is a possibility to get our carryout down possibly to 1.5, even lower, 1.5 billion bushel, which would definitely give us some upside opportunity.
Right.
On the other side of the coin, we have not had ideal growing for several years. I honestly think we could blow in this trendline yield out on the water if we have perfect growing conditions. And we could be looking at a carryout still around 2.5. The big key in all of this is flexibility. We can still see much lower prices if things play out in a certain way. But on the other side of the coin, if demand is ticking up and we do have a slightly lower yield, we could definitely see things going the other way. So have a marketing plan that gives you a floor but leaves your upside open in case the market does decide to run.
Sure. Brian, looking at U.S. weather and what we've had over the last 45 days, effectively, as we get into the planting season, it hasn't been ideal, right? And usually this time of year we're hyper focused on planting, but it seems like looking at the safrinha crop and what's going on in Argentina, that's kind of top of mind as well. So all that said, what's the most important factor that you're looking at right now? Is it U.S. weather? Is it South American crop size? Or just can you touch on both of those aspects a little bit more?
Yeah, you summarized that well, Drew. I think it's a recipe, if you will, for potential volatility in these markets. As Jeremy just highlighted, we're looking at the potential for long-term volatility into the summer months, and you just amplified those factors over the short term that really give us some potential for volatility. Typically, we don't see that much volatility in the month of May, Drew.
Right.
Not this year.
Right.
We've got uncertainty about that Argentina crop. Unprecedented to see how much impact this corn stunt disease is going to have on their yields. I've heard producers say that they drive by their crops on the road 3 weeks ago and they look pretty good, and they walk out in the fields and they're seeing the damage caused by this insect. And so it's something that maybe the market will have to realize. We'll just have to wait and see on those combines roll.
Sure.
For Brazil, as you said, they're in the grain fill stage now. It's not a catastrophic situation because the crop is mostly already pollinated, but you can still trim those yields down.
Absolutely.
And as Jeremy made a great point, that may open up a few more export opportunities for us here in the U.S., if not in these last 3 months of the crop year here in the U.S., stretching in then maybe to that first quarter of 24-25, that SON quarter. So coming back to your comment about the U.S., it's a really uncertain time here, Drew, but turn uncertainty into opportunity is what I would suggest to producers, because
Absolutely.
anytime you're looking at the speed at which the producers with high-speed planters, with all the technology we have in 2024, give us a window and we can get this crop in the ground. But we've also got the smartest producers in the world. They're not going to plant it if the conditions aren't right.
Right.
We want to make sure that we've got a lot of money invested in these crops. So we're just going to have to watch the weather really closely there. You put all that in a pot, if you will, Drew. That's a recipe for volatility.
Right.
And
Right.
from our standpoint, the tools that Jeremy works with, has done for many, many years, are recipes, are tools that you can use to manage that volatility. But a lot of unknowns going forward.
Sure. No, that makes complete sense. It's quite an array of different factors that are always affecting our markets, and certainly no shortage right now. Also, Brian, last question for you, but talk to us a little bit more about the Russian wheat situation. A lot of volatility there, which is certainly causing a lot of volatility in wheat prices on a domestic and global basis. But what's your outlook moving forward, and what should we be looking for?
Boy, you look at Russia wheat, Drew, and we look at the crop year we're wrapping up now, 23-24. Most exports they've ever seen out of Russia, 53.5 million tons. USDA increased that by 1.5 million tons today. That's old crop. That just gives you an idea of how important Russia is, the top exporter in the world. As you go forward now into 24-25, however, the crop that they planted last fall has been suffering from some dryness. Now, we all know we don't want to kill a wheat crop because of dryness. It's a very stout, resilient crop. And as we get into spring here, though, it's going to need some moisture. So we want to watch the weather closely in Russia. And we've had a couple incidents here the last 2 weeks, Drew, where it's been cold. And of course, here in the U.S., you don't want to see that cold weather hit when that crop is too far advanced. And so there's some uncertainty about the cold weather too, how much damage was done. So as you go forward, another recipe, if you will, or ingredient into that pot of uncertainty and volatility is the Russian wheat crop. So the next 45 days critical to see how the weather treats that crop as you go through the final stages of development.
Sure, makes sense. Jeremy, last question. We've got a little bit more of a volatile market, right? Prices, were more attractive than they were, right? And prices, higher than we've seen since early February. If you're a farmer and you've got old crop and new crop corn and soybeans to sell and make marketing decisions with us, can you give us kind of a baseline suggestion or a baseline thought on a general strategy that they should be executing or looking at?
Oh, absolutely, Drew. On the old crop, it really comes down to your local cash market. But with the cost of carry, if it is in commercial storage and you have borrowed money, the cost to own corn or beans commercially would probably outweigh the cost of or the benefit from the spreads.
Sure.
So if you have old crop and it's stored commercially, let's go ahead and get rid of it. But there is upside opportunities we'd already discussed. Let's look at buying some calls. They're relatively cheap. We did have a tick up today in July volatility, but they are still very reasonable and probably cheaper than the cost of the storage and interest for both corn and soybeans.
Sure.
New crop. There's a lot to be written about in the 24-25 story yet. We need to have control of it.
Yeah.
We had lows in December corn in the 440s. We're up around 490. The high in this calendar year happened on the first day of this calendar year on January 2nd. We had a high of 502 and a quarter.
Right.
And since then, we've been trending down.
Yeah.
We very easily could trend back lower. Let's get a floor, use some puts. A December 480 put today traded just below 30 cents for corn. And the soybeans, a 1160 November put traded around 45. Let's get in the floors, get control. It was maybe a touch below break even, but it's better to lose a little money than a lot of money. An opportunity to possibly have a home run this year yet.
Awesome. Yeah. Nope. Appreciate those commentaries. And D's 25 corn is hovering around that $5 range as well. So maybe something to consider, I guess, moving forward. But thank you both for your comments today. Very, very insightful, and always an interesting market. But thanks everybody at home for watching today. Be sure to like and subscribe our ATI YouTube channel. You can watch the ATI Pro Media team every weekday live at 9 a.m. for breaking news on the markets. We'll see you again on, I believe the date is June 12th, which is the next USDA report. So not too far away. And certainly happy Mother's Day to all those moms out there. And have a great day.
Welcome to Advanced Trading. Join the community of thousands of subscribers for access to industry-leading risk advisors, insightful research, and engaging live streams. We are your go-to channel for the latest grain market and livestock analysis. Subscribe now.